Support Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. We'll call the meeting to order at this point in time. Any public comment? No public, so no comment. Okay. Next, we have the minutes of August 7th, the 23rd, and 28th. Want to have a motion or?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I second it.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the minutes of August 7th, 23rd, and 28th.
Correct.
Okay, and it's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are minutes. Thank you. Okay, topics for discussion. Just to give the folks out there in TV land an update, we've been working on a homeowner sewer connection guidebook for several months now, and last Tuesday we had an extensive work session and worked through the document and made a number of revisions, and I think we're at the point now where we're getting towards the end of this. But let me just say, everybody now has the latest copy that Ann had sent out. I will point out just a couple things. One is that some of the connection diagrams are not the ones that are referenced in the document, so they need to be corrected. That's Dan Pelletier needs to give us the right ones, or someone. I also think that, in the appendix, like the street list, not the listing, but the street map, if you will, the Phase 2 area map has to be put in landscape instead of portrait because it's kind of distorted, but that's up to someone else. And then we're going to go through this and talk about it. We had mentioned previously one of the things we might add to this document, whether it goes in the glossary or goes as an appendix, is the color coding of utility pipes. And Val, I think you have a picture, whatever you took, that we can use for that. And I think that would be a good thing, just because people see things going on and they don't know what it is. Is that gas, is it cable TV, et cetera, et cetera. I also think that after today's meeting, we should be at the point to be able to hand this document from ourselves, who are not in the business of formatting things and putting things together, to someone. And Larry, I just tell you, Larry Valentine is here, Board of Selectmen liaison. I just mention that I did reach out to both Megan and Dan to see if they had anybody on their team who could help us with that. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen has anybody who could help us with that. But it would be a matter of someone who's familiar with just formatting documents and, working things around and moving things here or there, making sure the pagination is right, et cetera, to put it in shape, play with the margins, all that.
Let me explore that.
What's that?
I'll explore it.
Okay, and the idea would be, that person most likely has to sit down with Ann for a while and just go through it. Yeah. Okay? And then out of that would come a document that's pretty, I would say, ready for publication. But my thoughts are, and I want to get some input on this, is once we get to that point, and we've all gone through it one more time, my feeling is we should put it on our website for a week or two and see what the response is before we go print 700 copies or something like that, just to see what it is. So that's where my mind is at the moment. Go ahead.
Maybe we give it to the Board of Selectmen for 1 week and then do exactly what you said?
You could, although Larry told us before that it's not their job to approve this.
Okay.
You may want to speak to that, Larry?
Never mind then.
I think Larry Valentine, Board of Selectmen liaison, I think at this point, I like the idea of putting it on the website, people look at it. And we can put it in the package for the selectmen at the same time, and then we can publish it after that.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I think timing's important now to get it out.
Okay. All right. Hey, Dan, good morning.
Morning, how you doing?
Good. We're just at the point of talking about the guidebook. One of the topics we came up with is, yeah, sure. One of the topics we came up with for today, after today's meeting, we're pretty much assuming that this thing, as far as we're concerned, is ready to be handed off to someone to format it and go through all the margins and all that stuff. We didn't know if there's someone on your team or Megan's team or Board of Selectmen team who could help do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can volunteer. I'm pretty good with Adobe and Word and stuff. So.
That would be very helpful. I'll be happy to sit down with you so that we can go through and make sure everything is properly placed and find.
You're willing to do that. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what your time availability is, but The idea would be we get through that, say, in the next week, hopefully, and then everybody gets one last look at it. And then the idea is we put it up on the website at that point in time, let people react for a week or two, you know, before we start publishing,
Yeah.
you know, 200 of these things or 500 of these things, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting this thing together is good. I think it's gonna solve a lot of concern for people, so.
Okay, the other topic I'll just share with you is, this morning we were talking about potentially putting in a table or chart that's just the color code for utilities. People see pipes all over the place. Like you go by and you see a stack of green pipes in Chatham, what does that mean? You see yellow pipes, what does that mean? And so Val took a picture of this. We were thinking about putting this either as an appendix or put it in the glossary or something like that. And probably, you know, where it says green, you make that green, you know, that kind of stuff. And then people would, hey, okay, they're working in my street, what is it?
Mhm.
You know, because that will come up.
That, and we could probably add the dig safe,
That's-
thing as well, cause that is coordinated pretty closely with that, and if people see marks in the street, they'll know, what's being marked.
Okay, so does everybody agree that would be a good thing to put in the appendix, I guess?
Yeah,
Yes, definitely.
Is that- okay.
Definitely, it's gonna mirror the dig safe.
And it should. Okay, so we'll consider that a done deal. One observation on the document is the hookup, the connection diagrams, the green guys, they're not consistent with the words. So the one is one that says front hookup and it's really a rear.
Okay,
You know, we gotta make sure we had the right ones in there. Just,
and that's for the two images that I edited, the option A and
We
option
have
B,
to
is that
double
what we're?
check. I inserted them, but there may have been a slip up in the inserting, so.
let me just look at what I have here, just because we wanna make sure we get it right. Morning, Megan, how are you?
Morning,
Good, I'm not gonna pick on you, but I think you came in late because I was looking for help on getting the document put together. Okay, so if I look at 4A, it says front hookup option A, and it's really going to the rear. And then the grinder pump one looks okay, and then the one that's called 4B says hookup option or rear hookup option, and it's really changing from a rear hookup to a front one. So somehow we gotta make something different here.
On that note, I'll add this chart, is
Which
better,
chart?
Okay,
better landscaped, Dan, but also the colors got changed.
Well, that one is a placeholder.
Okay.
That one needs to be replaced with the one that we
Okay.
originally did.
Because the colors match the CDM map of the original. So I'll send you a new one or whatever you need, let me know.
Yeah, I just took the one that you gave me and converted it to,
Yeah, and
but
I actually manually inserted it, just as a placeholder for everyone, but the colors have been changed, but we'll use the original. I couldn't insert the original, so we need to go
Okay.
back to the originals in some of
Okay.
those.
and so
No.
Megan, just to catch you up, our thought is that we're done here this morning. This crew has done as much of this document as they're going to do. And so the question was, how do we hand this off to someone who can format the whole thing? And Dan has volunteered to jump in and do that and work with Ann. And then the context is, or the idea is that we hopefully get that done the next week. And then we end up, you know, we get a quick review from everybody, say, yep, no more issues. And then we post it to the website for like 2 weeks and let people react to it before we think about publishing it. That's a great idea. Okay, that way, you know, we can clean up anything that shows up, or someone may say, hey, you didn't talk about this, or, you know, that kind of thing. Although, you know, as we go forward, this will be sort of a living document that we can update and change, but if you're thinking about printing things in kind of big quantities, you want to make sure it's pretty darn close to what you want at that point in time, so.
should we just retitle instead of front hookup and
Yes,
rear
that's the
hook
simplest.
to, you know, connecting to existing,
Make it correct,
yeah,
that's all.
and
Yeah.
then, you know,
Make it correct,
Okay.
that's all.
They're also, they can be sized differently, obviously. Those are just
Yeah.
in there to be in there.
Huh?
And
Yeah.
they were there for review, just so, to make sure we actually had the right diagrams to begin with.
Yep, okay, so, and then there was one other,
Which page you talking about?
we're talking about the sewer connection diagrams, I just call them the green diagrams. the wording at the moment, either the wording or the figures aren't correct, so we can put the right, we have the figures, we just need to make the words, the right words.
And if I remember, Noreen had kind of was hoping we could get those, was it on the introduction page?
Yes, that's the first question here, is do we want to include pictures in your 5-pager? Because that might make it harder to print.
Here's the point, when you go through and do your thing, that 5-step thing needs to fit on one sheet, both sides. So however you can do it, fine, and it may be little tiny postage stamps, you know, that type of thing. You just gotta work with it, and that's why on this version, we'll get into it, but, you know, I put the step 1 stuff and then the words all in the block, on the box, so I was just trying to see if I could fit it, you know, just by playing around with it, so.
I think there's room for 2 pictures, moderately sized.
When you're playing with the margins and all that, you can figure that out. Megan, the other thing is I think you made a comment about, do we really need to put in the license application because someone else is gonna go pull that? I don't feel strongly one way or another, so, you know, that being said, if we don't put that in, then, he's still going to the, anyhow, if we don't put it in, then, we can move forward quickly. If we were gonna wait till the 11th session, you know, then we'll wait for the 11th session, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we would need the
I'm
license
plugged in, I
installer
don't know. That's the,
Having
all I
a
can
list
do.
of them would be one thing, but we're
Right.
just not gonna have that for months.
I thought you were actually coming up with what the application, I won't say from the homeowner, but to do the service would be.
Yes, that will be available, but the homeowner's not gonna pull that.
I understand,
Yeah.
I understand.
So I don't know if we should.
And it'll be available on your website anyhow, right? So,
Let's move on.
so let's take that one out, okay? All right, those are the general topics I had. Is it,
I have one that I want to charge Larry Valentine with, actually, and that is our, what you call the landscape chart at the end that has the timelines in it. Larry, can you review that just to make sure nothing in that has changed as far as you know? Because when we did it, it was a while ago.
Excuse me, it's to mirror the original CWMP. So the only changes were made were when 500,000 for Hinckley was moved from Phase 1 into Phase 2.
So it's accurate as far as we know.
should
Correct.
be,
It's from
Yeah.
13.3 of the CWMP, so
should be.
Those may change.
you're off the hook, Larry.
Thank you.
Oh, please.
As you know, the CWMP is a living document, so they may change in the future, but we need to stick with what we have now.
It's consistent, I believe it's consistent with the information we have at the moment, so. Okay? All right, so having said that, I don't know if anybody, you know, it's up to the group. We want to walk through this thing hopefully quickly, and if people had comments to it specifically, we could at least make note of that.
We can do it very quickly if you want to
That's
start now.
Stop.
Let's do that. I don't know, Megan, I don't know if you want to sit up here. Might be helpful. John, just so you know, we're going through the guidebook, just so you know, making editorials at the moment, so.
All right, the first one is, I wasn't clear, Dan, do you want your name under Water Department in this very first section?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I've been advising my staff when people call to forward them to me, so it doesn't make a difference one way or another. It's in the email, so might as well put it in there.
Okay,
I'm going to mention, if I could, to Megan and Dan, that we're going to end at 10 today, so just so you'll know what we're doing this.
all right. Next is, this was just for approval, this is the section in red that Dan added. The resident engineer will distribute the forms on a street-by-street, area-by-area basis, depending on the contractor's planned construction sequence. The idea is to stay well ahead of the actual construction so that the forms are returned before the contractor gets to a particular area. This process will start prior to the contractor starting construction. Does anyone
Yes.
want to change it?
Okay, so the resident engineer will distribute the forms. My only comment would be, perhaps we could give the form a name, or It just sounds a little ambivalent to me when it says the resident engineer will distribute the forms. I wrote spell out, is this the
Sewer
sewer,
lateral,
even if we have to repeat it a few times, that would be my
What do we
comment.
put in there?
Sewer, what's it called, sewer service connection form? Is that the
Whatever it
official
says on
title?
the form.
Pardon me?
So
Sanitary
whatever it
sewer.
says on the form.
Yeah, wherever it is.
Sanitary sewer?
Location form, yeah.
So, I've got two different voices going here, so distribute the sewer, no,
Sanitary sewer location form.
sanitary service,
Sanitary sewer
Sewer
location form. Is
location.
that right, Megan?
Well, that title's different from the original form we had from the CDM meeting, but that's the official one now?
This is the form, right?
That's what they provide me with.
Yeah.
To make the
Okay.
edits
So it's called
too.
the sanitary sewer location form. That's what it says.
Okay, whatever. And on the same note, in the sentence above that red,
Could we go at my speed, please?
Okay.
I'm actually still correcting things here, so.
Okay.
And I am not feeling well today, so I'm particularly slow. All right, I'll have to get back to some of this later. Okay, go ahead.
okay, so before we got to the red, in the sentence above it, it says, upon receipt of the, now this says service connection location form. So I believe we're talking about the same form, so I just want to get some consistency and some capitals. Even Dan can add those at a later date. Thank you.
I'd actually like to, it's so easy to lose these that I'm going to mark these as we go.
And then I have one more after that, but I'll wait.
Okay, and it's in the previous paragraph,
Yeah.
upon receipt of the
See, that says
sanitary sewer.
whatever we're calling it. And with a capital, maybe. I don't have a lot of comments, so I don't want you to get worried. They're just all in the beginning.
That's what you always say, and then we end up with 3 hours later.
No, I have remarkably few once we get
All
beyond.
right.
Okay, I've made a note that we're gonna be
Okay.
correcting it, correcting.
Next, so in the sentence after the red, again, the same issue. It's the intent of the Board of Health, et cetera, hold workshops for homeowners upon receipt of the, and I would again say service, sanitary service connection form rather than lateral form.
Is that correct? We'll change it.
And personally, I would make the reference to the appendix a separate sentence. I think it reads better. Well, I'm not asking,
I'm trying to, okay. Go ahead.
okay, so upon receipt of the form with the correct name, and then I would say a sample of that form is included in the appendix, or Dan knows what I mean.
Yes,
You have to get the right number, it's not 9.
I know,
Right,
I know, it's
right.
gonna change.
So just make sure you get that right.
Okay,
I have one in number 3.
okay,
Okay, so middle of the number 3 paragraph, it starts off, the professional engineer can advise you with questions about elevations. I've had a couple of people say that doesn't read well, and they would prefer to see questions you may have about elevations. Just so you folks know, Chris Harlow has been reviewing this, and I get a couple of comments from Sharon as well, so.
Got it, it's already been changed?
Okay.
The question is, read that now, it says the professional engineer can advise you with questions. That makes it sound like the professional engineer is gonna ask you questions.
Can address questions you may have.
That might be better.
Yeah.
Yes, that is better.
Got it.
All right,
Better. I have one in step 4.
by the way, we're assuming that no one else has questions in these sections while we're
That's
doing
right.
this. I'm just,
Yellow.
if you got one while we're here, speak up.
Well, I'm only yelling out when it doesn't have a
I know,
comment
most of us
to
are pretty happy
land
at
on,
this point.
you know, so.
I'll take anything, because a lot of people didn't respond at all,
Okay,
so.
all right. So in number 4, the last sentence in the first paragraph starts off with the word ballpark. That disturbed Chris Harlow. And he thinks we should use average cost, which probably is better than ballpark.
Is it average or mean?
Most
I
people-
Well, I mean, it depends on the basis
How
of
about
the
typical
sample.
cost? Just
Yeah,
put the word
yeah.
typical in.
I prefer that,
Just put typical.
because frankly, you can
Okay.
calculate an average, but
Now, on the next section, table of contents,
Hey, wait, are we done with this? Wait, are we done with this? We're all set?
yes,
So the 2-pager, we're in agreement with, except if we have a chance to put some figures in, we'll do that. Right?
yep.
All right, so now we're on the table of contents?
okay, so I mapped out a table of contents,
Okay.
which I will be happy to propose as we go along. I'll tell you where I think it should go in, and then you guys can discuss.
The table is just something where we click each heading, and so if you get me a list of those headings, we can see if they map.
Well, you can't click it if it's a printed document. So,
No, I mean, that's how we're gonna process the document.
So I think the thing to do here, unless you're changing the order of things,
no,
my suggestion is that we let this go to the next step and see what, what comes out of, I'll call it at that point, Dan's system,
Yes,
and see what it looks like, and then we can decide whether we use 1 through 7, or A through G, or this really deserves its own title, unless you've got one that stands out to you that says this one needs a title. I don't know where you.
well,
want
all right,
this.
but that's what I did, and it's right here, but,
can you, if you email that to Dan and I, we
Just
can
give him that.
see if it maps.
Dan, take that, will you?
Will do.
Please.
but he won't have my thing that matches the numbers, whatever,
You know what, when we're done,
Just hand it off
can you
to him.
give me your document?
no,
We can Xerox it though.
whatever.
We'll just Xerox it.
My fear is it'll take us forever to get through that, but I
Yeah.
appreciate,
Okay.
I appreciate trying to get it done, so.
Thank you.
All right, additional words that need to change, or sentences, or,
Okay, so in the, why does this Harwich sewer project, what does this Harwich sewer project do? The first sentence says the Phase 2 sewer project will provide a network on underground pipes,
That's a
of
typo.
underground
Got
pipes.
it. Thank you.
And then it says to convey wastewater from East Harwich to a centralized wastewater treatment. I would drop the word centralized, that's just me.
I don't have a problem with that.
I actually like centralized, but it may not work there, so let's put a think about it there. You're right, it kinda doesn't work, but
Right. And I think
any other comments?
personally would be on the think about. I think this is the,
I don't think the average homeowner is gonna know what a centralized wastewater system is, so taking it out would be appropriate in this handbook.
All right, let's just take it out.
Let's take it out.
All right,
okay.
Noreen, what's your next
Gone.
one?
What does Phase 2 mean? I thought we had taken this out before. In the middle of the piece, it starts off, Phase 2 is the first of 7 construction phases with 6 to follow. The 6 to follow seems silly to me if it's the one of 7. I mean, that's just me. You guys do what you want.
All right, say it again?
I would
Phase
drop
2.
the with 6 to follow.
Yep. I think that's
Okay.
That's okay, yeah,
appropriate to
that's
take.
And
okay.
then it says identifies,
Peter, did you disagree, or yes?
No, I'm good, take
Okay.
it out.
and then it says identifies 8 phases spread over a 35 to 40 year. It's always been 40. I mean, I don't know why we're saying 35 to 40. We've never said 35. So I would say 40. Okay, then I would bold, why is Harwich sewering the Pleasant Bay watershed now? Because it was bold
Yep.
before it lost its bold.
Lost
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um,
Every time I put something in from Peter, it takes out the bold.
Right. So then the sentence starting with in addition. All right,
Yes.
let me see. The Commonwealth of Mass looks favorite neighbors, partnering with one another. Just 1 second. Okay, the way I had this was, in addition, the Com of Mass looks favorably at neighboring communities partnering with one another by providing loans at as low as 0% interest for the town's portion of the Harwich Municipal Sewer construction.
There was debate about that in the past, and we didn't know which way to go, and so it was left provisionally,
Okay,
because it sounded like the towns were
Right.
offering the loans.
so how do we think that one sounds that I just said?
Read it again to us.
Okay, in addition to the Com of Mass, the Com of Mass looks favorably at neighboring communities partnering with one another by providing loans at as low as 0% interest for the town's portion of the municipal sewer construction. And then I would drop the sentence after it.
I have no problem with that change.
I guess the reason is, just double checking, is the antecedent in that is not Harwich providing the loans, but the Commonwealth providing the loans.
Commonwealth,
Through a state revolving fund is,
right?
No, I know that, but I'm just making sure that it reads. And we take out the last sentence?
I'm not in favor of that.
I'm not in favor of it
Okay,
either.
leave it.
And the reason being is that one of the reasons for moving forward at this time with getting the construction
Okay.
funding and whatnot was because he wanted to get this state revolving fund application in
That's
this
fine.
fall, so.
Okay, so we have that changed to by providing loans at as low as 0% interest for the town's portion of the Harwich Municipal Sewer construction.
Done, on the screen already.
Okay. Down to, is your property in Phase 2?
Okay,
So we have this listed as check the final Phase 2 street address listing, but I noticed the one in the appendix is the same one that's on Megan's website that says the April 17th listing, so I'm just looking for consistency.
That is the same one.
Well, I know it's the same form, but for the
No.
title to be
Is the point the title or is the point the date?
the title, well,
Oh, okay,
I mean,
so make the title consistent, so you're,
okay.
right?
Yep. Depends on which chart you import.
Yep, I got it.
Okay. Now, on sewer, I'm just gonna keep going unless people, all right.
Hey, if we get to the section,
Okay.
somebody's got another comment, or I would jump in.
Just like the finance committee for years, all right.
Keep going.
Sewer construction sequence. In the previous version, the one we
What
had,
page are you on, what section?
7. Well, I know it is now.
Where are you?
it's the
Sewer
one below we
construction
just
sequence.
discussed.
Sewer construction
The
sequence.
next item.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, so in the version that we looked at on August 28th, the sections that are numbered 1 and 2 were bold, and I like them bold, it's just my opinion.
They were intended to be bold,
Okay,
and this is, again, sometimes when I insert something from someone else,
uh-huh,
it takes out the bolding.
okay. Now, it doesn't matter, except for up to the final formatter, but the last version we looked at had the next paragraph indented with a bullet. I mean, I thought it read better, but
Which paragraph are you talking about?
First, comma, Harwich-owned municipal sewer pipes will be installed in a street.
Okay, if we, I took out the bullets because there was only one bullet at that point. We can put in bullets later.
I think the distinction here is, since you talk about 1 and 2 in
Right.
the first sentence,
Yeah,
I think you're referring to, in the next paragraph starts first.
Yeah.
And then the following paragraph that starts with lateral curb to home connection, that doesn't start second, or secondly, or something. Where they're both, one's meant to be the first one and one's meant to be the second.
Right,
You just put one period
we'll
and
just
two
put
period.
one.
yeah,
and
that's
Yeah.
fine.
indent them.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'm just
or-
trying to get readability.
Yep.
And I would say in the number one, we've been struggling back and forth with the word roadway. In the second sentence in that part, this is the part that starts off first, comma, Harwich. The second sentence says, Harwich owns and maintains the collection system pipes within
Should say the town's right away.
the road, I was gonna say the roads right away, I couldn't read my own writing, but roadway right of way doesn't sound right to me, but I was gonna say road, comma, S, within the roads right away, but you could certainly say towns right away, I mean, whatever, it's just readability.
it technically, I think we went over this in the past, in that on the, we used roadway because it,
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
so the town's right-of-way is generally larger than the roadway,
Right.
right? So using the town's right-of-way, I think, is a more accurate.
Better,
okay.
done.
Next.
Okay, I'm gonna go down to, current and future activities,
In the Phase 2 installation project,
yes,
which by the way has a question mark. I don't know why it has a question mark, but,
that's a good question.
no, it shouldn't. See the question mark?
It's, the question is, the following is the section inserted by Dan, we agreed to review prior to the next edit.
Okay, but for now, we can take out, now we can take out that question, right?
Yep. Assuming everybody reviewed it.
Should there be a question mark or just an S?
Fair.
That sounds like a question.
Current and future activities?
There is a question mark at the end, I don't know if you.
No, that goes.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be a period statement, right?
Yeah,
Right.
okay, it's not a question.
Okay,
Okay, so just words, the sentence starting with the design process in number one of that section. the des-
Oh, wait, before you get to that, I have one before that
Okay.
point, so
Is
let's
it
talk
mi-
about this.
Is it mid-October? I
So,
was skipping
where it
that.
says in the first sentence, the 90% design for the East Harwich sewer collection system is scheduled to be completed and submitted with the town's funding application, I would insert to the state of Massachusetts revolving, state revolving fund, SRF, by mid-October, or mid-October 2018.
So SRF funding application?
Yeah.
You want it written out, or is SRF fine?
Well, you know, we're gonna define SRF in the back, so maybe at this point, and we talked about it before, so maybe you just say, the town's funding application to the state SRF revolving fund, or something like that.
I put in, see if this submitted to the state revolving fund, FRS, SRF application, what do you,
Okay,
Okay,
now
Okay.
we get into your sentence.
so the next sentence, design process included an aerial topographical survey of East Harwich, comma, small o for obtaining the elevation of individual, et cetera.
I don't know where you are, so I can't
Okay.
make the corrections.
Next sentence down.
The next sentence starts from where Peter and you were.
Yep.
The design process included an aerial topographical survey of East Harwich.
Yep.
Comma. And then I would make that capital O a small o.
Got it.
Obtaining the elevation of individual home sill elevations by way of a land survey.
Survey or surveyor?
I say survey, but I don't think you get the elevations by the person, I think.
Yeah,
it's-
they went out and actually
I
shot.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
How about just saying, obtaining elevation of individual sill elevations, take out by way of a land surveyor, you don't need that,
that's good, that's all, that's even better.
Even better.
and conducting soil borings. Okay.
And take out the comma, we don't need it before, and
yeah.
conducting soil borings.
Well, it's an Oxford comma.
Pardon me?
It's an Oxford comma if we leave it there. No,
I was taught with the Oxford comma, that's why I had.
and I always
Okay.
learned
But
that.
it-
I don't want to know about your
No, yeah, it doesn't
educations
matter.
right now, if you don't mind.
No, it's-
We'll send it to the
Another
high
day?
school,
Yeah.
we'll send it to the high school senior English
Yeah,
class
have
and
them,
say, what's right.
Okay, I would say on the last sentence in this section, I would say from most home, all right, the information was used to determine how deep the pipes in the street would have to be to accept wastewater by gravity, and this says from homes in the Phase 2 area. I would say from most homes in the Phase 2 area, because not all homes are on gravity, and that is a concern to those who are not.
We had it in there and took it out in the past, so we put
Okay.
it back in.
I thought this was Dan's section that just came in.
We debated that most before, I remember.
You know, we're gonna talk about grinder pumps in another section or two, so I'd just leave it the way it is myself. Anybody else have a?
I'm outvoted? Wow.
I've
Well, not yet,
actually,
not yet.
I'd actually prefer to leave it the way it was as well.
Which way, the from or the?
Most.
Without most, because I think it opens the door for some people to say, well, I'm not included. Some people are still
Well,
looking
make
for
a decision.
exceptions, so. I just think it's more generic
Just say most?
to not have most in there, just say home.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand what,
Yeah, I agree.
my vote is to leave from.
I
Well,
vote
it's
to leave
from most homes,
Or from homes or from most homes.
Oh,
from most homes.
now,
Not-
now we're adding the word as opposed to
Yes.
changing.
Oh, no, I was always adding.
Oh, okay, I'm good with from, but, you know,
I'm
Whatever
good
you
with
like.
from too. I just think it leaves a door open.
well, let's see, Val may have to be the deciding voice. on
Yeah,
this.
that's a tough one.
Well, I throw in the word majority. The majority of the homes.
I like that.
Sorry.
That works.
Okay, we're gonna go with most. I'm making an editorial decision there.
That's all right, though, you tipped them over, so.
So from most homes, all right,
Okay,
next,
we can always change again. All right, I prefer
where are you?
in number 2, construction,
Yeah,
we have talked about the 2 construction contracts, and when using the digit 2 rather than writing out TWO.
Yeah, it was just a transfer there.
And in the next sentence, the same thing, the 2
yeah,
contracts.
no, I get it.
All right.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I'll say on this one is, on the last sentence, we say sewer laterals. No, I guess that's all right. For a while, we were going back with laterals and other things, but it seems pretty consistent now. Number 3, just a typo in the first sentence.
I'm still back
Okay.
behind, sorry, but, okay, where are you?
Number 3, just a typo. While most of the Phase 2 construction will not require any homeowner involvement.
Got it.
Another typo, in the next sentence, part of the sewer main installation is making an accommodation for homeowners' sewer services, so homeowners needs to be plural in some, possessive in some way,
It's already been corrected.
okay? In the next sentence, it says the sewer later is not a sewer service, so I guess that's lateral. It's the one with NOT and caps in number 3. On page 9 and
Okay, the sewer lateral is not a sewer service, okay.
colon. And then the sewer service will be installed at a later date by blah, blah, blah.
Well, back up a line.
Okay,
Back up a line where it says, the sewer main in the street the property line, it should be to the property line.
Oh,
Wait a minute here. Which sentence is that in again?
Go up
The
one
sewer-
from where you are,
Yeah,
right above it says, the sewer main in the street to the property line. Add the word to between the. The sewer main
Got
in the
it.
street to the property line. And then, wait a minute,
I got one too.
property line. Okay. And then there's,
I have one.
wait a minute. See at the last sentence, the location of the sewer lateral will
Yep.
be needed by, I put the engineers when the curb to house
What-
connection is designed. I'm at the end of this sentence. Were you changing that?
Yes, I am.
did you have one, Noreen?
Well, I'll stay down on this sentence for a minute.
The last one?
All right, so the one above the last one, our residents may seek the services, it says, of a civil engineer. We've always called it professional engineer.
Wait a
I
minute,
hate-
I have to figure out which above what?
Right where you are, go up a line.
This form provides homeowners?
No, see where you're blinking?
Yeah,
Go up a line.
okay. I thought you meant the previous sentence,
Nope.
sorry.
See where it says civil engineer?
Yep, we need the phrase.
She's proposing to put in professional engineer, which is consistent with what we've always described it as a professional engineer.
And then, in your sentence, the location of the sewer lateral will be needed by engineers. Shouldn't it be installers? I'm unclear about this last sentence, Dan, so if you could help me out.
You have
So-
two engineers.
Engineer.
You need to get rid of one of the engineers.
Thank you.
If the homeowner makes the determination of where they're gonna place their sewer lateral, that location is gonna be needed by the design engineer who engineers the connection.
Okay.
It's gonna go from this point at the house to that point at the
Right.
sewer.
But if they were hired prior to that, then they would have been part of that decision. I see where you're
Oh,
going.
sure.
So it could be engineers. I was thinking it would be after the fact. That's fine then. I can live with that.
Okay, there was supposed to be a section 4, and I couldn't get that from Dan, so Dan needs to go back and look at, it was put in one of the little blurbs, and I couldn't download it from the blurb. So we are missing your section 4, needs to be added.
Was there a title? Just so we know.
I don't know.
Okay,
Dan, do you know what the
Um,
title was?
I
Don't remember.
will send
we'll
this.
figure it out.
I will send everybody section 4.
Okay,
I'll send it to myself and BCC everybody,
okay.
and if they want to provide.
Okay, so back in that same paragraph though, because Peter jumped ahead of me, there was a sentence that says, to best locate, you can just see it at the top of the screen.
Yep.
To
I'm
best
there.
locate, all it is that the town with the capital T should be possessive.
Thank you.
And we should change service connection location form to
To whatever,
Be consistent.
consistency.
Assuming you can do a search on that and
Find and replace.
make it all
Right.
sense.
okay. What is the timeline for phase 2? All right, so this is just wordsmithing. The first line where it says town approved phase 2 design funding, I thought it might read better if we had phase 2 design funding, and then on the right column had approved at 2017 town meeting.
This means that the town approved it, not that, in other words, we actually took it to a vote.
Well,
So the town, being the people.
This is a
understand.
lift from Megan's site, and I included it this way, so it would be exactly mirror what was on Megan's Department of Health site.
okay. I'm just hearing from people that nobody knows what ATM is, and I certainly don't blame them.
I don't either, I was questioning
Well, we
what
can
it
write
is.
out annual town
Right,
meeting.
all right.
Just write it out.
Well, even though it mirrors Megan's site, you don't think it reads better with approved at Springtown meeting? No? That's all right, if you don't, that's fine. And I was gonna make the same suggestion for the third item down, but you guys can decide.
Would it make sense to do this and just drop in a small Excel thing with the item and date? You know, if it was, like, to your point, phase 2 design funding was kind of a task, and then approved at spring 27 annual
I
town
was
meeting.
gonna suggest making this a table, which is what I think
Yes.
you're getting to, so put
It's
this
right
in
out of the
tabular
CDM
form.
Smith.
Let's just leave that to you to get that worked out.
See
Okay.
what you signed up for.
On the grinder pumps?
I would, I would opt for, in the version that we had last week, all right, so we had the 2 intro sentences under the need for grinder pumps. And then we went to bullets, and I thought it read better in the section last week
As
myself.
bullets?
As bullets, but, or as something, doesn't have to be bullets,
Okay, well,
but
that's a formatting
as,
thing.
yeah. But,
And by the way, let's just be clear, once, Dan and Ann get together and they put something out, we're all gonna get a chance to read it.
Right,
and
okay.
If you wanna further comment on it,
that's fine,
we'll
all
do
right,
that.
okay?
I took out bullets intentionally sometimes just because of this stage of the formatting, because I was getting bullets from different people's
Okay.
systems.
Fine,
And it was to clarify that the whole text was in one system. We can now change everything consistently.
So I'm clear, you're referring to bullets in front of which part, the whole?
okay, so we had it like under, we had them pressure, it was the
Okay.
thing you had last week. You can decide,
So bullet where it's bolded,
right,
Yes.
okay.
that was how we had it, but, when you're looking at the whole document as you change it, you'll see a flow to it
Mhm.
that we won't see now.
I've marked where the bullets were, Dan, so we can go back and reconstruct it.
Okay, so there's a sentence we've talked about quite a bit, and we're gonna talk about it again.
Where are you?
I am in the section that says, what do I need to know if I need a grinder
Yep.
pump? And I'm in the second last grouping,
Rules and regulations?
yes, but I'm in the next sentence. And I think it reads better this way. There can only be one property and account per pump.
Is that accurate? It is?
Yeah, yeah.
Why have the word and, why not just property account?
Pardon me?
Why and, why not just property account?
Property account? Well, what they're saying is one house and one account. I mean, it came from these guys, so.
Wait, so how's this sentence reading now?
I think it
There
says
can
the
only
same
be,
thing.
what are you proposing? There can only be,
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing, but I think it reads better.
no, but tell me what you said.
All right, there can only be one property and account per pump. As opposed to, there can only be one property per pump per account.
That is kind of confusing. I don't disagree with that. Okay, let's try it.
Would it make sense to reword the heading on that? What do I need to know if I need a grinder pump?
I would love it if you would
If
reword
it
that,
was like grinder pump question mark, what do I need to know?
something like that,
I
yeah.
mean,
Okay,
Well, you said you only had a few questions.
this is only a few.
I'm being facetious.
We're moving right along. I mean.
Okay, so suggestions to minimize your costs. Just my opinion. On the last redo, we had the indentations and the bullets under the lengthy list of different items to
Yeah.
minimize your costs. So
Those
again,
were
that will
just
be for the final,
Artificially taken out, so.
yeah, for the final formatters.
You done paving? I have a comment on the paving section if we get to that. Are you to that point?
I don't have anything there, Peter.
No, you to the point of paving?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the paving section, first sentence, it's not a question. I guess it is. What should the rest say be after the project is completed?
It is.
Okay. The fourth line down, it says more specifically, based on discussions with Link. I don't think we should put Link on the hook
Oh,
here.
I didn't notice that.
We should just say more specifically, paving will consist of, or typically consist of. I mean, you could put typically in if you want.
On this,
Can I take out specifically and put typically? I think that is a better choice.
What are you saying?
More specifically, you suggested more typically?
No, what I'm saying is,
Oh,
you
okay.
take out based on discussions with Link.
I got it, it's gone.
Well, okay, so I'm trying to, would the sentence be better saying, more specifically, paving will typically consist of a three-step process? I don't
Got
know.
it.
Or just typically paving.
Or just say
Yeah.
paving will,
That's
how
where I
about just
was
say
going.
paving will typically consist of a three-step process, period. Right? Take out more specifically, and
Got
just say
it, it's going.
typically. All right? You good?
Great.
All right?
on the second line in that section, we're missing the word is. The entirety of the project route is going to receive curb-to-curb paving.
That's
Good one, Megan.
Dan's insertion there from the past, so it was up for debate.
That was from Mike at CDM. I'll let him know.
The entirety of project route is going to receive curb-to-curb paving,
So the
or
sec-
should?
Should.
Where are we?
Second line in this section,
Yeah,
the entirety of the project route is going to receive.
that, it's just the timing of it.
Okay, is going to receive curb-to-curb paving, just put the word is in.
wait,
On the second line, the entirety of the project route
hold on, I'm across the sections here. The entirety of the project route
is, insert the
is
word
going.
is.
Yeah.
Okay? Anything else on paving? Okay. Noreen, what's your next?
And not till real estate,
Say it again?
not till selling your house, not till real estate.
Okay, anybody else have anything until we get to selling your house? Okay, let's get to selling your house. You wanna sell your house?
And the only comment I'll make there is just that for the formatters, you may want to consider bullets or whatever.
In the, under selling your house section, down
There were
in,
bullets, they were again taken out for just format.
okay, you go down to the third paragraph, so it starts when the Board of Health.
Yep,
Mhm.
The second sentence should, there's an and, it should be an and. So I think you have to flip to the next page.
And, where are you putting the and?
To seek an extension, not and extension, right?
got it,
I see.
removed.
I got one Noreen missed. How
Well,
could that
yeah, I
be?
told you real estate was, what did I miss?
All right.
Tough
Anything else?
crowd, John.
Okay, anything else in that section? Harwich Town contacts?
Now, I'll just throw out that I hope the contacts are a separate chapter, you know, or however you get to it in the table of contents.
Well, just like
because-
before that, where it says, what should a realtor say? That should be in bold, for instance.
Oh, they also, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so wherever there's a question, it should be in bold. I mean, just assuming that gets,
right, or bulleted, or,
you know, whatever, well, it
you know,
should, if it's
however.
bullet, yeah, we gotta be consistent with
yeah.
that.
Sorry, that again is, the bold was lost with
Yeah.
the bullets.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I'm hoping contacts will be, you know, a separate heading, because a lot of times that's all people are looking for.
Well, and by the way, when you do this, I'm assuming that, you know, this is gonna be front and back sided thing that you'll, when you get close to the end, you know, you don't wanna start a new thing down here, you flip it to the start of the next page. I mean, that's all part of the pagination process.
Right, well, I'm hoping it's a separate chapter, but
Okay.
that's just me. So, we have Megan's name in this, but I believe she agreed to that with the health email. We have,
Excuse me, and by the way, the Harwich Town contacts could be in an appendix,
it could be.
if we wanted to,
Um,
make it stand out.
Okay, so, and we should add the wastewater support committee here with the wastewater email. I don't know if we want our names, they change too often.
We actually discussed that and took it out. We can put it back in easily.
Well, do we have Dan, do we have Dan's email address in here?
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
I don't see it.
I don't see it in here.
Oh, sorry. I will add it.
Just a thought, is it, I believe it would be the selectmen's call, but when they hire that PR person, that they be the one point and they
But this will be
distribute.
done,
Right, I don't know if,
Well, we can always put it in afterwards. I mean,
yeah.
or maybe if we put it up on the website for a couple weeks,
Right.
and then they open those RFPs,
Right.
and
we'll
I
see.
don't know what the timeline is.
It's not gonna be that
We'll see.
quickly, yeah.
We'll see.
But, I mean, it would be nice to have it, but
I think that person ends up tapping into the
the
wastewater
wastewater
website.
email,
Yeah.
Kind of maybe shares that with whoever, the chair and
Right.
whatnot, and, they figure it out.
Sharon.
I think that's the reason they have the wastewater email address now.
right, yeah, definitely get that in here.
Especially since,
Latitude later on.
especially since the wastewater contact information, when you go to the town and the committee, it has our names, but
Right.
it doesn't actually have the wastewater committee address readily available.
Right. Sharon can get a new email, but that email is all we have right now, so I'm gonna propose that we give that to that coordinator when he comes on board, and she get a new one, if you know what I mean, so, but
That's fine.
one way or the other, as long as we get it in there.
What else do you have?
Nothing.
Resident engineer, we need to add to the glossary, because we talked about it somewhere, I noticed. I think the good news is we don't have too many definitions and too many acronyms or whatever, so I think that's good. Okay?
That may be something that, when it's posted on the web, people will come back with, because
Could be.
I think we can't judge what people want defined as
Sure.
easily as the public can.
Alphabetize the glossary too.
Okay?
Good idea.
To get us
I
to the
didn't think of
appendix?
that.
We do the appendix now?
Yeah.
So we decided in the appendix, we're gonna
Wait,
take out,
I have one,
oh, Larry.
thank you. I have one comment, is it appropriate somewhere in the contact list maybe to help people navigate our website? Because I've had people, even though, for instance, we say that the sewer plans are on the site, I get people that have a hard time finding that site, getting to the town website, going to the Board of Health, and then finding the site. Same way with the water department plans, if they're digitized, maybe just a quick, step one, step two, so people can find what we're telling them to get to. It's obvious to you folks as you're doing it, but I'm getting feedback that some folks are finding it difficult to navigate
that
to the
makes
proper
sense.
site.
Where would we put something like that?
Well, you could put it, you could either put it after the section we just talked about, for instance, where you have the email addresses.
How to find, navigate.
How to navigate to the site plans on site.
Or it could be an appendix, a one-sheet.
Could be an appendix. I'm just saying people are finding that difficult, some at least, and maybe we could give them some help.
So Megan, would you take an action for the Board of Health to come up with something? And Dan, if they go to the water department, your website, what do they get? What's the,
For service ties, right now, it's typically done through email, so they email customer service at Harwich Water.
And that's okay, as long as it's stated.
okay. So, does everybody agree we should make an appendix that just has a one-sheet thing as your contact?
And also, should we take it one step further, and while we have these documents in the appendix, if they're uploaded online, kind of the website, click this, click this, click this, to get to the Phase 2 map.
Right,
And
right.
for
Yeah.
all of them.
They have to sit there and actually do it and mimic the
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah, like a hot link, so you can
Well, you
just-
could do a little block diagram. that
Yeah,
just
that's what I
shows you
was-
get to here, and then, okay, here's the tabs.
Yeah.
Be helpful.
I
Okay.
can do that when I assemble it.
Yeah, that helps.
My fear is the water department's gonna be shut down this week because you're working on this document.
No, it won't take that long.
I'm teasing. All right. Where are you? Where are you?
I'm on appendix items.
All right, we're in the appendix. All right, so street listing, anybody have an issue with that?
Well, I still, I don't know if we could agree on a title, but it's probably ancient history at this point. Is this how we're gonna call it, the April 17th chart? I mean, I know that's what CDM called it.
There was a street listing before this.
Right,
That
I know.
wasn't correct or wasn't all-encompassing, so having a date can be helpful.
Yep, okay.
That's why I put it in, because there are multiple versions that are potentially floating around.
Yeah, I think it's good to put a date in, just because someone may say, hey, I'm not in the list anymore, or something. What happened? Why are you looking at an
Very
old list or a
good.
new list?
Great,
Okay,
right.
so the homeowner connection checklist, you on that?
Is it worth putting street ownership in there? Is that relevant
Putting-
to people looking?
Putting what?
The street ownership, if it's a private town,
Oh,
I mean,
Oh, so we take it out?
we could
Mhm.
take out that column. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant.
yeah.
For them, it probably doesn't matter, right?
I thought that the form was just useful in that if you're, it's almost like a public document to checklist.
Well, the good news is, this is exactly what is out there in the public domain right now, right?
right.
So
Keep it on
maybe,
Yeah.
I would
just
keep it as is.
Yeah. Okay.
And we need to have that is one of the ones where we need to make sure the Adobe version, your official version, goes in. This is actually a hand-done one.
Okay.
And I did that just to see if we could fit it in one page, because yours went across 2 pages, so. This is a placeholder. So we will put in your official one with that title.
CDM Smith's official one.
Well, the one that you have owned,
Getting
taken,
late.
inherited.
Ah,
All
yes.
right, we all good?
Okay,
The only reason I'm saying is it's
Yeah,
just
it's
beyond
getting late.
9:30, so we're time sensitive. All right, homeowner sewer connection checklist.
I mean, I'll just mention the thing that people had talked about putting in page numbers and things. I don't know if we're gonna get there on this. I mean, I just don't know.
Being relative to the checklist? I
Correct.
mean, where the question's
Correct.
answered?
Yeah,
Interesting if we can do it, but,
yeah, I mean,
I can do that when I format it.
right,
so you'd add a column that's basically as page reference or something, or a section reference or something?
if it doesn't get so tiny that, yeah,
Yeah.
it can go either way, I think.
Yeah, okay. We good?
You need to add it to the list. Homeowner sewer connection checklist.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't see it on here.
Good catch.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
So the appendix table of contents, you have the street listing.
Yep.
And then you have phase 2 map, but you don't list homeowner sewer connection checklist.
I couldn't insert it. It was just an editing situation.
Table of contents?
That's all
Oh,
right.
in the
move on.
I'm just
Table,
saying, in
sorry.
this table of contents,
Yep.
just make sure it
No,
gets in
oh,
there.
yeah, thank
It's
you.
not in there.
Okay?
And I'm not sure it will have a separate table of contents for the appendix, so that was really for our purposes.
Okay. And then licensed engineers isn't listed on there either.
No,
Okay.
So, number 3, license, the list of engineers.
I'm just.
That is the Board of Health list, right, the one you pass out?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just, that's just a temporary placeholder. We'll put the sequence in.
Yeah.
I was, part of the reason was I was just trying to see what would go on
Okay.
a single page.
Okay, now we talked about the hookup diagrams. You gotta get the words consistent with the,
That needs to be changed.
and by the way, we don't have in here the one that just shows a clean hookup to the front of the house. I guess we have one that shows the
Missing
side.
because I couldn't insert it. So there's a
Okay.
diagram missing.
So there may be 4 diagrams, right?
Yep.
So, all right.
That's something that we need to figure. It's also the sizing. I mean, having a single page with it as opposed to taking it down to something that might not be readable.
I had no problem with one on a page myself, but
I-
maybe two on a page, but I mean, you know, people they wanna read, they wanna be able to see these things.
I think the only thing I would say about those pictures would be that if we're able to put pictures in the shortened intro, I think would prefer they be not the grinder pump
Right.
picture, that's all. I
Right.
think we said that
Right.
before.
I think it would be the front and the rear connection. I mean,
Yeah, fine.
I'd just stick with those two. Okay? So we get to the health inspection sanitary sewer location form. I know Dan provided the sample, and then we'll put a blank one with it, either before, I guess, before or after, whatever, but that was the intent, right?
Yeah, and the blank again is missing. I had problems
That's okay.
inserting some things, so Dan knows what.
Yep. And then we get to the loan application, that's available. I know you had issues getting it in,
Yeah.
but
Again,
do you
it's-
have it? Does somebody have it?
I think I have it, and
Yeah, the real problem with it is I couldn't change the size of it, and it went way beyond the margin.
Understand.
So if you can
Understand.
do that with Adobe. I'm not sure, it's a locked document because it's a state document, you can do it. Okay.
Okay, and then the Phase 2 map, I'd put it in landscape, because I think that's the way it originally appeared in the document, so it'll work out better. And then the Harwich 8 sewering, I don't think the words of this are right, phasing timeline. The comment there is that, you know, when we originally did that, the colors on it matched the CWMP plan, so we want to make sure we do that, 'cause
This is we need to insert the original rather than this placeholder.
so maybe take out the word 8 on this, just the Harwich sewering phasing timeline or something.
I have the original in Excel and Adobe, so whichever is easier for you to work with, let me know.
both fine.
Okay. You know my email.
And that gets me to the last page, which is blank, so I assume you have no comments on that?
Well, it does have August 28th.
Well, of course. This will be,
And that's where we're gonna insert the dig safe color chart.
yep. Unless it fits somewhere else better, I don't know.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Just do that. Okay, so the mission now, having gone through that, is that Ann and Dan are gonna get together and work through a formatted version of this with all the attachments, so it's a near-ready document. And then my suggestion is, we can circulate that to the team, and then if we're all good with that, my suggestion is we post it to the website at that time. Let it sit there for a couple weeks and see what the response is, and we'll go from there before when we get down to printing, we need to talk about, how many do you really need, and, et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
Would it be worth, when we publish it, to kind of, give people an email address
Yep.
to provide comments to?
Good idea.
so you can either respond to the wastewater one, because we own it, whatever. But then it's also important, things like, we know some folks that are, I'll just call like neighborhood leaders and whatnot. We'll make sure that, we email them a copy and whatnot, so,
Yeah.
we'll come up with an email list just so we can distribute it to at least the folks we know who we want to have see it, and try and get it out that way. So, Maureen, you good?
No, I just want to thank Ann and Megan and Dan again, because we couldn't get this far with everything else that's going on in your departments and working and everything else without their extra efforts, so
Right.
I really appreciate it. And
Right.
Dan taking the file from here is,
And you may not have been when we first started talking, but on the back side of the cover, there are some words we put in there. I don't know if you're here for that. My comment was.
He has a copy of it.
Okay. It just says, hey, this is what this is for, and it was a collaborative effort, blah, blah. Just because you don't want that page to be blank, so it should say something.
And thank you to Noreen for her editing, which is most appreciated because I've looked at this document so many times.
you're welcome.
Heaven knows what I've missed. So any additional edits, please.
Yep, and I will.
I'm sure they're there.
Well, and I will just say, our chairman is not available at this point in time, but she is being kept informed of what's going on here by email. So we'll make sure, she gets the next version of this and whatnot, so. Okay, and I would just say, And why don't you at least keep the committee apprised as to where you are, like, we're gonna issue this thing on Monday, or, you know, we hit some snag or something, just so we know. My expectation would be that within the next week, you can get this done, but, you know,
You'll hear from us. You will, any snags that we hit, I think it's going to be bi-directional. I'm certain somebody will find some more input or typos, and Dan and I may have questions. So
Yep.
we will let you know when we're meeting and the outcome of that meeting, and everyone who's on the distribution list now will get all the information each time.
great.
Unless there are changes to that. So anybody wants to
Okay.
add someone or
All right, thank you very much. So the next item I have on the agenda, we got about 20 minutes left. Committee's update to the Board of Selectmen. Larry, I just say we're on the agenda for the 17th. And my plan there is to at least bring the Board of Selectmen up to date as to, you know, this committee meets, you know, 2 mornings and at least 1 night, you know, for the last 8 or 9 months. We've had a lot of input from folks and whatnot, but the major issues we go through that we hear from people are, how do I pay for this thing and what it's gonna cost me, and grinder pumps. So, you know, I would propose that on the grinder pump issue, we at least make the selectmen aware, they probably are, but with the fact that some communities have elected to actually buy the initial grinder pumps, certainly standardize on grinder pumps, you know, the make and model, as much as possible, and that at some point, the Board of Selectmen need to decide if they want to be part of that or not, or do that or not, you know, that kind of thing. And then as far as the how do I pay for it thing, I think the county loan program, we've had the administrator in here, we've talked about it a lot, it's in our document. And so there are funds available to help people. It's not no cost or, you know, no interest, but it is a relatively low interest and can be turned around very quickly, so.
Larry and I are working separate from the committee on a financial proposal, and I think we may have rolled it out by then, so that may roll right, when you mention financial assistance, that may be able to roll right into their conversation then, I'm hoping.
Okay, except for our board will probably not meet before then to
Right.
even talk about
Right.
it, so.
This was something I started on my own
Oh, I
several years
understand.
ago, so it's a Noreen product,
A
not a
Noreen product.
wastewater
Okay.
support
All right.
committee product, so. But it's just, you kind of put the gun to my head when you said you were mentioning that on the 17th, so.
Okay, and then, of course, the guidebook. I mean, by then we'll have a guidebook that we can say, hey, here it is. Go ahead, Larry.
I would just encourage you to pick maybe 1 or 2 topics,
Yeah.
not get too extended, and then figure next month you do the other 2.
Right.
As we go ahead.
Are you on the agenda for the 17th?
Larry will tell me. He's gonna get it done. Yeah,
That's easy.
make sure it's early.
You know, normally,
Aye.
some committee members might show up, but I have a commitment that day, so you'll probably be on your own, Peter.
Well, somebody else may show up, we'll see.
That's right.
Okay.
And,
All right,
and I would just ask, we had a quick conversation that Chris Clark had kind of wanted those monthly things to be part of public comment. I'm opposed to that because there are so many people that don't watch a meeting unless they see the word wastewater or whatever their keyword is. So I propose you put them up right after the consent agenda, and that's where it
Okay.
goes.
All right, any update, Larry, on the communication director, the RFP?
I checked with Evan, boy, Monday's holidays screw me up, maybe on Friday, and no responses yet. You know, just gone out, so I'll check again.
Okay, at some point, we're gonna need to plan
Right.
for that whole review process, you know, when the responses come back in. Obviously, it depends on how many they get or whatever, but at some point, this committee will have to get organized about that.
Agreed.
So we'll need to talk about it.
I noticed in the RFP that the due date is, I believe, September 20th.
Yeah.
So we won't be meeting before then. Maybe we can lay out a plan after that or see what happens.
We would next, according to this, our next meeting will be the September 27th.
Right.
So by then, one of the topics at that meeting will be how do we organize to review the RFPs responses, okay? Anything else on that? Okay, town administrator is not here, we have no correspondent announcements. I would just ask, I see John Bologna here, and if you folks don't mind, John, if you don't mind, I know that you've had a couple of meetings with some, I'll just say neighborhoods, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but if you could share with us, like the three major concerns, or, what are people talking about, that kind of, or where do they need help, or, those kinds of things, just brief.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, sorry I missed the public comment section earlier. I was doing my civic duty and voting over at the community center. But I think you touched upon a couple of them earlier. The financing certainly is the big one. How are we supposed to pay for it? Clarity on the schedule. When do we need to do it? One of the things that we're getting sort of like some mixed messages or mixed communication coming from folks. The well driller in my neighborhood was there, and he was lining up, and a person says, well, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm going to drill. He goes, well, we put the tap in, but you're not going to have to hook up right away. So we all in this room probably know what that means, but the message was, well, I'm not going to have to hook up right away, so, that's like indefinitely,
Yeah, okay.
So, controlling the message. Also, at one of the neighborhood meetings, it was mentioned about some conversation regarding the engineer requirements versus the sanitarian, so there's been some conversation on that. So the key feedback, I got was, well, we don't have to hire an engineer. And, all over your documents this morning as you were talking, with currently what's in your regs is that requirement. So I guess clarity of the message is important, and for keeping consistent communication in the communities is very important, throughout. The other question having to do with the, any variance process for folks who have recently installed systems. Within the past 2 years, let's say. And there's a lot of consternation about having to tear apart a system that was recently installed. That's a considerable expense. And I know there's a variance process, and we talked to Megan about that. Maybe some clarity on that. What does that mean? At least the way the regulations are set up right now, there's a mandate for everyone to hook up. And, there's some sense that I've gotten from folks that, well, they can apply for a variance and not have to hook up until they sell the property or something else. So that's another thing I think that needs to be clarified.
I think in our documentation on the variance thing, we have identified it is possible to seek a variance, but I think we're very clear to say that at some point in time, and not too far down the road, you will have to hook up. My understanding is the Board of Health is not going to say, oh, you got a new system, 10 years from now you hook up. Maybe they give you 6 months or a year, so I don't know what it's going to be, but my understanding is there's not going to be a lot of leeway there. Yeah, the other question I just asked you, we have, I think, heard and even discussed here the possibility of a sanitarian designing a system, but then having a PE stamp it as being one option that people could use. And I'm not in that business, but my understanding is there are some for like Title V. Some of that process goes on now. I don't know.
Yeah, an engineer has to stamp it. That means they've got to review the design. It's got to be under their responsible control of the design. And I think if your regs say professional engineer, I think just that needs to be consistent, throughout. And I think that the sense is that you're going to save a lot of money going one versus the other. There's a certain price point. At the end of the day, I really don't think there's going to be much of a difference. It's just like if you hire a sanitarian to do a Title V system versus a professional engineer to do it within the regulations of Title V. When you see what the value is on the street, they're pretty competitive. Sure. So I really don't see that much difference. It's just, again, mixed messages going through. Yep. And, feedback comes, well, we don't have to hire an engineer. And, so it's just sending someone down another rabbit hole. So consistency of communication, I think, again, is important on that part of it. Okay. The other thing is also the advanced planning. When do we need to do this? With the schedule that was given, again, one of the comments, well, you don't have to do this right away, meaning, well, you don't have to do it for 3 years, or we got 3 to 5 years before you hook it up. But yeah, obviously there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and some folks may have the savvy to know it's a direct shot for them. But there's other people that don't know.
Sure.
And, you know, we've certainly been advocating getting ahead of the curve, so to speak, with the advanced planning of it.
All right, Val, did you have your hand up? Did you have a question?
Thank you.
Okay, your hand, I saw, all right. If you don't mind, John, if you don't mind, Noreen has a question, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, Larry.
It's okay. Geez, I preempt the selectmen here. I'm honored.
So after your first workshop, I spoke to you right after the end of that, and you asked me if I had any questions, and the only question I had was that in your presentation, you said by April, you will need to know this, or you will need to be ready for this. And I said, by April, and we kind of talked quickly, there was a crowd, and you said, well, if they know by April, then they're covered. It's definitely before construction, because there was a letter that had gone out, I don't remember, in July, that Megan drafted that was beautiful, that said during the construction process. So there was a question of clarity between the by April or May versus the during the construction process. So I just thought I would throw that on the table for comment. It seems we feel that we have clarified it to be during the construction process. So I don't know what, as you say, consistency of message. I kind of hope that's what people are hearing out there.
Right, so there's 2 points. One is, you know, the by April was when supposedly the bid documents would be, contract would be awarded and construction ready to start. So again, as part of the advanced planning part of it, to understand where the optimal location for the sewer tap is. And in a lot of cases, it's going to be a direct shot. It's sort of no-brainer. But there are others where more complicated, where it's going to take some thought and to look at other infrastructure, for instance, electrical services, water services. Folks have landscaping, hardscaping, patios, and things like that. So the direct shot may not necessarily be the most optimum location. Actually, to divert it and go another route may be more favorable for those situations. So that was, you know, again, getting ahead of the curve. Not really sure right now at this point, until the contracts are actually let out, where the construction is going to start. You know, once that work starts, you really need to know where it's going to be, because once the contractor is running down the line, they're going to say X marks the spot, and that's where the tap's going. So, you know, there's 650 some odd properties affected by this. So there's a lot of work's got to be compressed in a very short period of time, and then it's a hurry up and wait until you do the actual hookup. So
No, I agree. It's difficult because you certainly don't want people waiting till the last minute, but on the other hand, we don't really need all 650 ready by April, but we don't know exactly which one. So there is some vagaries still
Right.
in the.
Right. So, you know, an adage in engineering is that, you know, a job well planned is a job half done. So to get ahead of it with you know, proper time to give proper attention to be able to manage all these things. And it's not just, you know, coming from my office, it's other firms that are, you know, facing a pretty daunting task for a lot of work to be done in for a short period of time. And it's busy. Everyone's busy right now. So to be able to manage that you know, properly, and you know, to also give the taxpayers and the residents of East Harwich the most favorable, you know, competitive, let's say, in terms of both the engineering as well as on the actual installation.
And John's correct, once those construction contracts are let, then we'll have project schedules for each of the, however many contracts there are. And then you can say, okay, you know, it looks like this street might be done on, you know, this kind of time frame, and then that'll be a lot more surety. Our job at that point will be to get those schedules in front of us and people talking about it and getting it up here, getting on the website, and better defining what's going to be done when. So,
I mean,
Larry, go ahead, Ann.
one of the questions that keeps coming, I'm sorry, one of the questions that keeps coming up that I hear is my neighborhood first? So,
Oh.
you know, that can't be resolved until then.
No.
Sorry, Larry.
I was just going to confirm that, you know, there is some confusion on planning versus construction. And I guess some people say, well, you know, the pressure on, they read the pressure to do something by April, they read that as being pressure to do something on construction. And so it scares them. And really what we're talking about is, you know, so that message needs to be, I think these discussions are good. The guidebook will help a lot, communication. The two points I just wanted, discussion points in my neighborhood picnic that we talked about, wastewater. One was financing, which of course is everyone's favorite discussion, and Noreen, you brought it up. people were asking me, why couldn't the, and I've gotten some legal responses who can't do this, but I don't think we've given up, and that is, you know, is there a way that we get SRF funding, for instance, can we use some of that money to loan people to put in their collection at the 0 to 2% we get from that funding? You know, give them a break on interest, if that's possible. I know I have one neighbor who's contemplating, I don't think this is a doable thing, but I'm just telling you, people are trying to be creative. Is it worthwhile trying to put in an article in the town meeting to bond, you know, to borrow money, to reloan that to homeowners to do it at a lower percent? Instead of 5% of the county, could they get it like a 2%? So people are thinking about ways, and I think the initial feedback I get, and none of that may be possible, but people keep talking about it. I just throw that out there. The second discussion that is so interesting, and I'll tell this as sort of an anecdote. A neighbor of mine is would like for one thing, Megan, she has a new septic tank, so she's going to have to replace that, and she's going to come in for a waiver to try to go. She knows it has to be done, so we're not talking about extended, maybe 2 or 3 years, but. Her point was she has an ailing mother, so she would like to add a bedroom, you know, basically a bedroom for her mother, and she's willing to put it, you know, to go through the expense of going from septic to sewers. If there's some flexibility, allow her to put a bedroom in her basement for mother she's taking care of, and that's a little bit of discussion because we have the you know, no net gain in the stuff we're working on. I know Chatham is looking at that, asking to another bedroom. We do have some flow capability, but I throw that out because then I was thinking about it, and that's always a mistake for me to think about anything. But we've been pressing, we being the Board of Selectmen, have been pressing our planning board, for instance, to make it easier to get accessory apartments for affordable housing. Because the county, as you know, has some guidelines, and we have an affordable housing trust, so that's one of the key items we're working for in the future. Well, when you think about it, we're in a bit of a dilemma. We're pressing on one hand affordable housing, accessory apartments, and on the other hand, are we going to limit those because of our wastewater, you know, our sewer rules? So I think, I know I'm going to bring this back as a discussion point. A policy is, you know, we want to control growth, and we want to control the wastewater, but we do need to be consistent on do we allow for movement on accessory apartments going forward. So I just throw that out, and I haven't gone any further than thinking about it. But it's something at some point we're going to have to deal with if we're going to, you know, we can't have it both ways.
Okay, thanks, Larry. We're going to be up against a hard time stop here, so I'm just going to move on and say our next meeting at the moment is September 27th. It's an evening meeting here. So again, just kind of summarizing the interim, Ann and Dan are going to get together, get our document together, get it back to us, and hopefully move on before the 27th with a document that at least at that point is up on the website.
Question.
Okay? Yeah.
Might we be having that community back? It's probably premature to ask. Hardin Lane, we had mentioned, we might have them on the 27th. Hardin Lane and Church Street.
Don't know yet.
Okay.
I haven't heard back from the engineers, so.
Pardon me?
I haven't heard
I
back
see.
from CDM Smith,
Okay.
and quite frankly, it's going to come down to whether CDM Smith and a town administrator want to reach out to them directly and have
I
their own
see.
discussion, or whether they want to do
I
it
gotcha.
here. That's
Okay.
sort of where that comes
Makes
from.
sense.
And you know the topic there, Larry, right? The topic is the folks from Hardin Lane were here
I knew that.
our last meeting and talking about grinder pumps and blah, blah, blah. And I reached out, I think I sent it to you as well as Chris and CDM Smith, saying, hey, you need to get in touch with these folks. There was one gentleman we identified as the neighborhood contact point, and I did get some feedback from David Young saying he was gonna get in touch with them. I don't know where that stands at the moment, but they need some attention, let's put it that way.
And actually, David Young is on vacation for
Yeah,
a week or 10 days. Like
yeah,
that,
but at some
so
point, you know.
I'll follow up.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Second?
Second, we are adjourned, thank you.